mic and your camera turned off while you're in attendance. For those in attendance, we'll be providing a presentation. Please also keep your mic off until you're invited to make your presentation, and then feel free to turn it on. So with that, we do have an agenda in front of us. Does anybody like to make any change? So I'm not seeing that. So who would like to adopt the agenda? So moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Solium. Further discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? So that's carried unanimously. We have the consent agenda. Would anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda? So I'm not seeing any. Who would like to move the consent agenda as presented? So moved by Councillor James and seconded by Councillor White. Further discussion? So seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. That's on to the council member reports. So we're done with regular council meetings this year after tonight, and we're back on January 13th. And then we're also there on January 27th. And just to note, there's also budget workshops as well. You can find details on Langley City's website. On to item 6B. Any?
Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Are we not dealing with item 3?
Oh.
The committee of the whole.
Absolutely blew by that. Thank you very much. So I will go back a little bit then to the committee of the whole. So we need to move into the committee of the whole. So moved by Councillor Mack, seconded by Councillor Wallace and Councillor Mack.
Hi, sorry, my internet connection is coming through is really unstable. It keeps glitching out. So sorry about that. I'm trying to recuse myself for the upcoming discussion. I have a pecuniary, non-pecuniary conflict of interest. So if I could be put into the waiting room, that'd be great.
And Mayor Pahal, just through to Councillor Mack, we do need to have the reason for you having a conflict of interest to be stated.
I own a business on the stretch of road where this construction will be going on, and it'll be very disruptive. So is that sufficient?
Sorry, I just couldn't get my thing to go on there. Yes, that is perfect, Mayor Mack.
Okay.
Councillor Mack through.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll put you in the waiting room and we'll get you back once this is done. Perfect. Yeah, my apologies on that. We normally don't have the committee of the whole. So we need to now go, I believe it was moved and seconded for committee of the whole. So we now have Mr. Pollock to give the presentation.
I was getting my hopes up there. I thought I might get away with it tonight. So thank you, Member Hall. Just give council a brief update on the recent activities. So the construction on 206 is continuing and is expected to be complete by Friday, December the 20th. The project will then move over onto the Fraser One-Way itself between 206 and Salt Lane, commencing on January 2nd, 2025. The contractor will be removing most of their material from site, including their storage containers and so forth over the Christmas period, just for security reasons. There will also be a notification going out to the members along, or the businesses and property owners along the Fraser One-Way, that the work will indeed be starting on that section on January the 2nd. So there haven't been any specific or significant problems on that section of roadway so far, and say that will be complete by the December the 20th. Continuing to work with BC Hydro on expediting their work. The work has been approved, and the contractor has all the materials ordered. I'm speaking as much to the expediting the installation of the underground, because obviously we have to transfer from the overhead to the underground. So we're trying to expedite that as quickly as possible, because that is often a bit of a portion of a project that always sits till the very end. So construction activities will be shut down between Friday, the December the 20th, and January the 1st. And so there'll be no activities going on in that period of time. This morning we had the second meeting of the Business Liaison Committee. I think there's a good, frank discussion in those meetings, and the contractor has shared how they intend to commence working in this area. And the members of the committee have expressed some concerns around security and so forth, and we're working with them on that and working with the contractor to discuss those issues. The city's webpage is in the process of being updated, and that's where we'll start to see the regular updates appearing in the form of a newsletter. And folks will also have the option to sign up for direct email and have that update mailed out to them as well. And there will also be some, now that we're looking to move on to the Fraser One Way, there's going to be some, I think, 10 signs that will be installed along the Fraser One Way, just indicating where people can park, given that some of the parking will be removed temporarily during the construction. So in terms of the overall construction, the project is intended to be substantially complete by the latter part of August 2025. And there's been some discussion as well with the DLBA on the Arts Alive Festival, just to coordinate those two the activities. And now that the contractor is going to be moving on to the one way, obviously they're doing some prep work in terms of setting up some monitors for vibration and so forth, because that is a concern of the businesses that are immediately adjacent to this. That and I think the recent work that's been undertaken on the SkyTrain project here with the piling has sort of raised that concern a little bit more to the forefront. So, but the contractor is required to deal with those through the construction contract, and I think that's certainly something that can be worked through. So that's pretty much the end of my update, Mr. Mayor. I say basically we're on track to get off 206 Street by the end of this year, and starting in the new year on the one way east of Salt Lane. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the update. I'll just turn it over to council if there's any questions. Okay, Councillor White, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. Just a couple quick questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Pollock, for your update. Questions regarding security. You mentioned that they had some issues. The liaison group had some concerns about security, and that we were working through them. Can you expand? Has there been theft, or what exactly are their concerns?
Well, thank you through the chair to Councillor White. As I think has been previously mentioned in discussions regarding this, the contractor is going to be erecting a fence on either side of the roadway itself, but providing a pedestrian access to maintain access to all the buildings on either side of the Fraser One Way. So some of the concerns that have been raised is around what happens whenever maybe in the evening hours after the businesses are closed, and is concerns around lighting and just security. So those are some of the issues that we're working with. Some of the options are to I think the contractor is proposing to use additional lighting sort of that could be used to provide illumination. But we're still working through or having discussions as to what the contractor is going to have on site for security. And then we're going to be discussing with bylaws and RCMP regarding what specific concerns they would have in this area with people accessing the properties, either for maybe trying to sleep overnight or even trying to use as an opportunity to break into some of the businesses. So that's the kind of issue that we're looking to deal with, and trying to evaluate what the magnitude of that issue is, and then what some remedial options might be to resolve it. Thank you.
Yes, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. Just one follow-up question. The fence that you're referring to that they're going to be building, is that like a wire grate fence, or is it a solid wall? Or what exactly will that look like?
Through the chair, I would classify it as and this is proprietary maybe, but it's the super safe fence, the sort of the blue construction fencing that you would see typically around a construction site. They will probably have a fabric attached to that, and the purpose of that is to basically make sure that there's no detritus that is kind of inadvertently ejected out of the construction site. So it'll be a movable fence, but it will be contiguous, and it will be only temporary in nature for whenever the contract is underway. Thank you.
Was there any further questions from council?
Just one last follow-up question, Mayor. Thank you.
Sure.
Through the mayor to Mr. Pollock. So with the fabric that's on the graded fence, that would kind of obstruct any view of the building on the other side of the sidewalk. Is that correct? Like, would that obstruct vision?
I think yes, I think that is a largely opaque screen. That's correct.
Okay. Because then I can see where, like, security concerns surrounding break-in and such, like how exactly would, I mean, by obstructing that view, I can see where they would have concerns that an individual might have a portion or significant amount of time to maybe break into a unit or a building.
Yes, through the chair, and I think that is, there's been a couple of options discussed as whether or not the whenever the businesses are closed in the evening time and through the night, that the pedestrian access would be closed off, or whether there would be some additional ability to have some form of security there, and that's still under review. But whenever the fence goes up in place, the intent is to have that matter addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pollock.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So I'm not seeing any, so we can let Councillor Mack in. And while that's happening, I'll entertain a motion that we rise and report. So moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Solium. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously, and we'll just wait for Councillor Mack to get back in.
Mayor Pahal, have you advised?
I can send her a text message, so
Okay.
that. Just let her know. Hey, I think she's back. So going back to item 6B, which is council advisory body updates, is there any updates that council would like to provide? So I'm not seeing any, so we'll go on to item 7A, which is the city west 8 lot subdivision application. So that's 20525 and 2054156 Avenue. We have a report and then there's some other recommendations as well. So I don't know, Mr. Johansson, did you have any part of that, or are you just looking for perhaps questions from council if we have any?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. We do have the applicant with us tonight that could provide a presentation overview of their proposed rezoning. The application is proposing to rezone two RS2 or state residential lots to 8 RS1 zone lots to permit a subdivision from 2 lots to 8 lots. The proposed land use is consistent with the official community plan, OCP. Parts of the properties involved are in lands that are over 20% slope and have a moderately low environmental sensitive areas. So they require development permit for that, and habitat compensation and compensation for tree removal. They're also proposing to replant trees on the site as a part of their proposal. So we have the applicant here that could provide a presentation, and we also have the file manager, Mr. Beto, with us as well. Thank you.
Sure. So I know we have the actual staff report. Did we want to deal with that report first, or did we want to go right to the applicant presentation for the zoning? So I see in the order of the agenda that we have the staff report. So let's maybe start with that, and then we'll go on towards the zoning after that. So is there any sort of questions or comments that council has for the report? So we'll go to Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. And through the mayor, I guess my concern is the environmental sensitivity. It is moderately low environmental impact, but it is the 20% slope. I still worry it's a natural ecosystem, and just in replacing, I don't know if you can replace what gets taken away, but I know it was an extensive report as far as the environmental piece goes, but just yeah, I have some concerns in regards to the environmental ecosystem impact.
Thank you. Councillor Albrecht.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal. To staff, I'm wondering, the environmental consultant, EBB, were they hired by the developer, or is that a party that is hired by the city as a independent third party?
Mr. Mayor, perhaps I could respond to that. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The report from EBB was from the developer's consultant, who was required to provide an assessment report in accordance with the city's development permit area guidelines. The valuation for the compensation, however, was done by the city's environmental consultant. And you see the amount in the report that was recommended there.
Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Albrecht?
No, that's fine for now. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Solian?
Wait, can you hear me okay? Okay, excellent. I'm just looking at the street that we're talking about here south of Grade. Are there sidewalks on either the north side or the south side of the street? I think it's 46A. And if not, I mean, I don't think there are, but are there any plans to put a sidewalk in along 46A? I'm just curious about the amount of parking, because we're looking at, I guess, going from 2 homes to the potential of, I believe, 16 on that street if it goes to smooth. Is that correct?
There would be that potential to have up to 4 units per lot in accordance with those the SMU regulation and the city's revised zoning bylaw. There will be a requirement to construct sidewalk along the frontage of the property there.
Okay. And then I guess a follow-up would be, what are for SMUs, what is the parking requirement, driveway requirement for those 4 lots?
Well, it would be one driveway for each lot. There aren't detailed or separate requirements for SMUs developed at this point.
I see. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Johansson.
Yes, excuse me, thank you. Just to, thank you, Mayor, just to further elaborate on Mr. Beddoes' answer to Councillor Solium, the setbacks that are anticipated for these new homes, if this subdivision is approved and building permits go through, would allow for driveways between the property line and the building face to provide for parking on the driveway and in the garages. So that will help to reduce the pressure on the street.
Great, thank you.
Is there any other questions from council? So I'm not seeing any. Yeah, I mean, I also have a few concerns about this. This is the first project I think that I've dealt with as a council where we're looking at environmentally sensitive areas. So this is a new one for me, and I understand sort of the 2-to-1 replacement, and I see in the report that you've listed some projects here as well that could be applied. I guess a couple of questions that I have is, do you know how many mature conifers are being removed as part of this proposal?
They are listed in the tree survey. I don't have the figure handy just at the moment, Mr. Mayor, but we could get that number for you.
Okay. Do you have a sort of idea of how many trees in total will be removed?
And it's in the order of 75 approximately.
Okay. Mr. Johansson? You're on mute if you're talking.
Yes. Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so yes, there's through the mayor to your question, there's 65 conifers of various shapes that are proposed for removal. And the way we negotiated compensation is on a 2-to-1 basis. So and Mr. Beto can talk about the calculation behind this, but it results in $75,000 contribution, cash in lieu, that can be then used towards planting trees in other locations in support of the forest management strategy. And the habitat compensation package also valued at 2-to-1 and used a methodology, a compensation methodology, excuse me, that's used province-wide to value and to create compensation values for riparian areas and that sort of thing. Results in the $201,000 that can be applied to a number of habitat restoration and tree planting programs that are also listed in the report that Mr. Pollock on the engineering side can speak to a little bit more as well. It's also important to note that as a part of the application, staff really pushed to have to maximize the amount of trees replanted on the site. So there's 24 that are proposed to be planted on the site, including native species. Douglas fir is a really important one to have there. Also vine maple, and there's also going to be, I believe, between 6 to 8 street trees. So we're definitely getting trees back on the site. It is a slope site, so there's going to a need for retaining walls. But again, because it has that moderately low environmental area, there has to be that compensation, and that money will be used to enhance habitat elsewhere in the city. And we're also going to be getting that cash in lieu for the tree removal. Thank you.
Yeah. I just have 2 more on the report. I'll have some more probably during the first and second reading. I mean, I think in the urban forest management strategy, which we have coming up later on the agenda, there's a figure that talks about the sort of tall trees in our community. And in that neighborhood, it was like, I think there's a dozen tall trees in all of Langley City, like not a lot. There's a tall tree identified in that ESA area. Could you let me know if this particular application would result in the removal of that particular tall tree?
Yes, through the mayor, Mr. Beto can answer, or I can, but it's a simple answer, no.
That's that's good news. And I guess my final thought on this is, you know, when we look at a ESA, and it's the first one for me, I always have to sort of weigh, you know, is that, you know, loss of tree canopy and mature forest, which we won't get back for a generation, being compensated adequately in another part of the community if we move forward with it. So again, I'll leave it for first and second, but those are sort of the things on my mind while I was reading the staff report. I see there's some more questions. We'll go to Councillor Albrecht.
Thank you, Mayor Pahal, and yeah, it's interesting you brought up the urban forest management strategy that we're going to be looking at a little later this meeting, and this is something as part of the environment committee is really important, and the loss of trees, while we can try to put a value on them, mature trees, I don't know how we can. The benefit they provide a community is really really important and valued, and that loss is something that I don't know how we gain back. The question I did have was a possible opportunity for a pedestrian connection between 46 and Great Crescent, kind of a mid-block thing, kind of cut off or allow people to connect up, and I wouldn't even mind as we move forward on this to refer it back to staff to get a little more detail on the tree loss in the environmental area from an assessment from either our own staff or bring in another third party, independent third party to review the assessment of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think there was necessarily a question there. So we'll go to Councillor Solian.
The PED connection.
PED connection. Sorry, that was it. Yes. So staff can answer that question.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And we saw the comment from a resident as well. It's an excellent question. And we are pursuing a pedestrian connection across this block. It's a very long block and would certainly benefit from a connection at somewhere near the midpoint. What we're looking at, however, is closer to 206 Street. So to the east of this, there are some remaining properties with subdivision potential, more in alignment with 206 Street. And we're looking at those as possible opportunities to make that connection. There are some hurdles given the slopes, etc., but we will be reviewing that as part of looking at those properties to the east.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Albrecht. Councillor Solian.
My question was along those lines. I was wondering if there were any plans into the future of any roadway connection between Grade and 46A in the next. I mean, as these plans to subdivide continue, I was thinking of a pedestrian walkway as well, but there is the nature trail that does that already. So I mean, obviously this would be potentially a bit easier to access, but yeah, I was just kind of curious if there are any plans for roadway, because it is fairly difficult for drivers to get from Mossy Estates to Grade as is, but and that surrounding area. So that does clog up 208 a decent amount. So I was just kind of curious if there's an easier path going forward.
I'll turn that over to staff.
Yeah, there aren't any, I guess, connections identified in our master transportation plan that I'm aware of, but I would defer to the Director of Engineering perhaps on that.
Through the chair, Councillor Sullivan, no, there is not a connection or an extension of 46B Avenue proposed, and I think it would be, given the depth of the lot, somewhat challenging to be able to do so in this area, but the transportation plan doesn't have a provision for that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the information.
Thank you. Councillor White, I saw your hand up. Is it down now?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two quick questions, if I could, through the mayor to Mr. Pollock. The roadway into that particular area on the backside of the lots, that I believe is like a 7-meter single side roadway with a sidewalk on the side of the units. I'm just curious, and I know Mr. Johansson spoke to this already, but I just wanted to understand there's going to be some sort of turnaround in that area. Is that correct? And will that be at the end of it, or is that turnaround within the lot location itself?
Through the chair to Councillor White, thank you for the question. I think that definitely given the length of that, there would have to be some form of a turnaround. I don't believe that's been addressed at this stage, but it will certainly be addressed as it goes through the application. Thank you.
Mr. Beto.
Mr. Mayor, just if I could mention that there is an attachment to the report showing a temporary, what we call a hammerhead turnaround, roughly between proposed lots 1 and 2. So that would be on a temporary basis until the full road width can be constructed through the subdivision of the lots to the north.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Benham.
Is there any other questions or comments from council on the report? So I'm not seeing any on the report. So the recommendation is that the report titled City West 8-lot subdivision application 20525 and 20541 46A Avenue be received for information. Would anybody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Solium. So I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Is there any opposed to the report? No one's opposed to the report. It's just for information, I assume. Yes, so okay, so it's carried unanimously. So that brings us on to the actual rezoning. So Ms. Kenny, can you advise if our statutory notice requirements were met for this?
Yes, Mayor Pahal, all statutory notices requirements were met.
Thank you. And then Mr. Johansson, was there any additional context you'd like to provide before you turn it over to the applicant team to present?
Thank you, Mayor. No additional context. We have the applicant team here to present.
Perfect. So welcome to the applicant team. Please feel free. Mr. Pollock, maybe before I do that, we'll see if he has a context.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to provide a subsequent update to Councillor White's question. I just was looking at the package, and there is actually, the package does indicate that between the two of the lots on the 46A side do actually do illustrate a hammerhead turnaround at the lot line. So there is already a provision for those in the design. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, then we'll turn it over to the applicants. Welcome. Please feel free to turn on your camera, turn on your mic, and share your screen.
Hi everybody, my name is Jocelyn. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jocelyn, and I'm the applicant for proposed 8-lot subdivision of 20525 and 20541 46A Avenue. To give you some background on the site, current zoning of the property is RS2, a state residential zone, and these properties are designated suburban in the OCP. We are proposing to rezone the property to RS1 for subdivision into 8 lots. proposal complies with the OCP, a portion of the site has slopes exceeding 20% grade, and northern portion of the property has also been identified to have some environmentally sensitive area in the OCP. Qualified professionals were retained to ensure the development is per city's established development permit guidelines. This map shows existing zoning in the area. Most of the lots in the area are RS1 with few RS2 zone lots. There is also an opportunity for RS2 zoned lots to redevelop to RS1 zoning. On the right here, we have the proposed lot layout with 4 lots fronting 46A Avenue and 4 fronting 46B Avenue. 7.6 meter road dedication is proposed for 46B Avenue. This table compares the minimum requirements of RS1 zone to the proposed lots. All proposed lots exceeds the minimum requirements of RS1 zone. Northern portion of the property is identified as an environmentally sensitive area, having a low to moderate to low value in the OCP. A qualified environmental professional from ENCON visited the site and recommended that this is an isolated forest with no connection to other natural habitat. Since development is proposed in the ESA and we are unable to accommodate the ESA at a ratio of 2:1 on site, a monetary compensation in the amount $201,040 will be provided. This amount was determined by an environmental consultant, EBB, retained by the city. Extensive tree removal is required to accommodate buildings, retaining walls, engineering services, driveways, etc. Clark Cavallina from Cavallina and Associates has prepared the landscape plan recommending 3 replacement trees per lot. In his opinion, due to proposed structures, only 3 trees should be planted so that they can reach their full mature height. Tree species such as Douglas fir, maple, dogwood, and magnolia are recommended. For replacement trees that were unable to accommodate on site, $75,000 will be provided. To provide access to proposed lots 1 to 4, 46B Avenue will be extended along the north property line and 46A Avenue will be widened. Sidewalks, curb and gutter, landscaping, street lighting are proposed along both road frontages, and service connections will be provided to each lot. A temporary hammerhead will be constructed along 46B Avenue for vehicle turnaround. This turnaround is temporary and will be discharged and removed once the properties to the west develop. Portion of the site has slope exceeding 20% gradient, per OCP development in such area should be assessed by a geotechnical engineer and site should be developed per their recommendations. Tegbir Wajwa from Able Geotechnical Limited performed a site assessment, analyzed subsoil conditions and reviewed the published geological information and provided recommendations for site development. A tiered retaining wall with perforated pipes is proposed to provide a gentle slope for lots 1 to 4. The site drainage was also reviewed by the geotech to ensure there will be no impact on the walls or proposed homes. Here are some of the pictures illustrating potential homes that may be constructed on these lots. These homes will appear 3-level with garage in the basement along 46B Avenue and 2 levels along 46A Avenue. Per Bill 44, each lot is permitted up to 4 units. To conclude, this development complies with the policies of the OCP, meets the subdivision requirements of RS1 zone, and will bring 8 new homes to the area, assisting city in meeting the provincial housing requirements. This development will also result in upgrade to the city's road network and other infrastructure. Thank you.
So with that, I'll open it up if council has any questions for the applicant. So I'm not seeing any questions for the, Councillor Soliam. Please go ahead.
For the applicant, you mentioned that there's potential for 4 units per lot. The images you show in your proposal, are those duplexes or triplexes or fourplexes? I'm just kind of curious as to what you do have planned for the lots.
The plans we have now are just for single family, so they can achieve 4 units if they want with a single family with 1 suite and then maybe a garden suite. We're not sure if there is like an actual market for duplexes or triplexes, so we're not really sure if they'll actually be constructing duplexes or triplexes, maybe just single family homes.
I see. Okay. Do you know if there's a timeline for when that decision has to be made?
It, I am not sure about the timeline.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Solian. Mr. Bullock?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just go, I just want to go back to address one of Mr. Councillor Sullivan's comments on the extension of 46B Avenue. I made the comment that it could not be extended. I was thinking in the north, in an east-west direction because of the width there. But in the report, in the staff report, there is actually the provision or the acknowledgement that 46B would be extended to go on basically a U shape up to Great Crescent at some point in the future. So that can occur, but it wouldn't be extended east-west, but it will curl around at some point in the future. So I just wanted to bring it forward for council's edification. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johansson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add on to the question through the mayor to Councillor Solian. If this application is rezoned and the subdivision goes through and creates the 8 lots, then with the ability to have up to 4 units through the provincial legislation, there's that option in terms of when they're looking to bring in their building permit. So it could be a house with a suite, it could be a house with a suite and a carriage home, or sorry, coach home, sorry, garden suite. I was get those terms mixed up. Or it could be a triplex or quadplex. But the lots are sized such that, like I said, they would have the adequate driveways in all of those scenarios, and it would be consistent with our zoning that we have in place for RS1 in the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for the applicant? So I'm not seeing any for the applicant. Oh, Councillor Albrecht, please go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor Ball. I thought I had my hand up. To the applicant there, you showed some cross sections with some pretty substantial retaining walls. Can you identify where those retaining walls would be located?
Through Mayor, these will be located in the rear of the lots number 1 to 4.
Okay, so those lots are going to have a yard probably at the roof line of the adjacent or to the lots to the north then. Is that would be correct?
These are tiered retaining walls. There is quite a bit of setback.
Yeah, but it's really tall. Like it looks like it's 2 meters, 3 meters.
Yes, so there one of the tier is about 1.2 meter high, and then there is about 3 meter spacing, and then there's another tier which is about 1.2, kind of similar. So yes, you're correct, but there is enough spacing, so I don't believe there will be any privacy issues.
Okay, no, it's just nice to know how it's going to look. So it's going to be the 46A homes are going to be much higher than the properties north of it, with a substantial retaining wall between them. Thank you.
Sorry, there are existing homes to the east. They have kind of a similar a streetscape. So the homes along 46A, they will be lower, and 46B will be higher.
Yep, no, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Pahal, you seem to be on mute.
Yes, sorry, I was talking to myself. So the applicants are free to go. Turn off your camera or stick around, but just off camera. So we do have a recommendation for discussion that the bylaw cited as zoning bylaw 1996, number 2100, amendment number 214, 2024, number 3295 be read at first and second time. So I'll move it. And we'll see if there's a seconder, at least for discussion. So moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor James, I mean. So yeah, just for discussion, I think I have some notes, but since I moved it, I'll take care of that procedural piece there. So for me, I do have some concerns about this. It is the first ESA projects we did. So for me, I just want to make sure all due diligence is taken place with this. Again, you know, it is one of the largest tree removals that if it gets approved, that I would ever be part of. So, you know, for that, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the steep area, and you know how we'll be doing the tiering there. I kind of I want to know more about the compensation if we do move forward to it. I'd really like to understand, is what we're losing going to be replaced somewhere else, knowing, you know, that tree canopy is a priority for our community. So there's just a whole bunch of stuff. So, you know, I'll see what the rest of council says, but I would certainly be willing to defer giving first and second, or I would be more than willing to put or have council put a deferral motion, just so that council can get sort of an independent report from staff on basically what we would lose in this area and how we could replace it and actually make a more benefit for the community. So for me, I think the test would be that if we're removing mature trees in a stand of forest, we got to be doing something that's going to meaningfully increase the environmental posture of our community somewhere else. And I know we have a lot of things that we can do to improve, but I would really like to see that. So at the end of the day, we're actually getting a net environmental benefit for the community, and there are ways that we can quantify that. We did put a number on this forest, so I think we can put a number on a benefit that we could have somewhere else in the community. And, you know, we sort of had that 1 to 2. So I would like to see a 2x benefit in the community from if I was to entertain the removal of this ESA area, because it would set the trend for the removal of the rest of this ESA area in our community, and we don't have very many. So I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. I mean, the other thing that's interesting, you know, the applicant could consider as well is, you know, could you shift the density to the street and then retain the back? So, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to get 16 units closer and then having the back as a riparian area. But, you know, that's not the point of this development. I think for me, again, I would just really like to see the quantified benefit that we would get for our community to benefit the environment if we were to remove it. So I'll leave it there and I'll turn it over to Councillor Albrecht.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pahal. And I would like to refer it back to staff to do a tree assessment based on our urban forest management plan. Get some feedback from there. I'd like to have some consideration for pedestrian access, and I'd also like to have a review of the road extension and connection to Grade Crescent and see if that works physically and appropriately for our road standards. It's something that I think could be beneficial. So I'll move that referral.
Okay, so we have a referral motion to staff for this. So it's seconded by Councillor Mack. So we have to deal with the referral motion, and that puts aside the first and second reading at this time. So for me, I guess I would also like to amend that if possible. So amend and also get a report on the habitat mitigation, and also get a report on habitat restoration and net environmental benefit to the city of Langley, to yours as well. So that's part of that report. I'll see if there's a seconder for that. So seconded by Councillor Albrecht. So just on the discussion on the amendment, so we can talk about the main referral motion, but just on my amendment, is there any further discussion on that particular amendment? So I see 2 hands. Is that for the main deferral or just for the amendment? I'm assuming it's just for the referral. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. So all in favor of the amendment? Is there any opposed? So the amended stays. So now we're on the amended referral motion. So with that, we'll turn it over to Councillor Wallace for a comment or question.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused about the amendment, but I'll speak to the first part of what we were speaking in regards to ecological sensitive areas. And for me, this area and this part of the city, I treasure, and I'm sure a lot of other people treasure. I'm not comfortable. We're just putting through an urban forest management strategy. The amount of trees that are, people that are already worried about mature trees that are coming down in that area or are alarming. I wasn't aware of how many trees were going to be taken, so I'm not comfortable with that. And I think when we talk about, we're going to do the 1 to 2 or what, and we're going to, develop in another part of the city, we're not understanding the importance of ecosystems that exist already. So we've already become, our environmental sustainability committee has become a bat-friendly community. So do we know how many bats actually, are sensitive to that area, right? That our migration of birds. I know that was all in the report, but that report was a few years back. So, things change and environments change, climate changes. So I still do have some concerns in regards to habitat and the loss of our ecosystem that's already in existence. So yeah, I don't know where I sit as far as moving forward until we get some more information back of how can we save some of this ecosystem.
Exactly. And I think just for clarity for my piece there, it is looking at, if we were to move forward with this, what would actually quantify, like, would we see a net benefit with a restoration somewhere else is what I would like to see. So if it comes back a negative or a positive, that would be something to see. So, Mr. Johansson, you have a comment or question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, just as a discussion point, we did identify habitat compensation priorities in the report. And that would be something that we were prepared to come back with much more detail about the actual planting plan and the tree plantings that would occur as part of that. Some of it involves wetland rehabilitation and creation, restoration of wetland area, removal of invasive species, and planting trees in Bryden Dog Park and on the west side of Bryden Lagoon. So I just want to make it clear that as a part of the application, the habitat compensation dollar value is to be applied to these specific compensation projects, and that would be something that Engineering, Parks, and Environment would be detailing, and then they would be going out and having someone do that for them. So there would be tangible results as a part of that dollar value being provided to the city by the applicant. Otherwise, we wouldn't have brought this application forward.
Absolutely.
Just want to make sure it's clear.
Mr. Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to build on Mr. Johansson's points there, the report has, I think, 5 or 6 different locations that have been identified. What I would propose is that staff will look at each of those and apply some criteria to sort of see which is the best and the most beneficial project to bring forward as compensation, and that would form part of a future report back to council as part of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Yes, I would also echo some of the similar concerns expressed by yourself, Councillor Wallace and Councillor Albrecht. I am reviewing the EBB environmental habitat compensation valuation for the properties, and if I could just speak to Mr. Beto to answer some questions regarding that. The total area of the property that's outlined in this letter, they're saying equates to 2,872 square meters. And with the city's requirement of a 2-to-1 ratio, that works out to 5,744 square meters, with the resulting compensation for this being $201,040. Is this on top of the $75,000 cash in lieu deposit that has being offered for the trees that would be removed as well?
That's correct. That's in addition.
Right. And just one further question regarding that. They do quote that the trees that they are assessing this compensation on is in the 1 to 2 meter height, but they don't make any allowance for any of the larger trees I see specified. So I would definitely, and so I'm not sure whether or not that is actually a fair reflection of that, and would therefore concur with Mayor Pahal on the overall valuation of that compensation given the size of the trees. So thank you.
Yeah, and this is a refer back to staff, so this is not killing the zoning project. So it does allow us to get more information back. And I mean, I think we heard from most of council, there is some things that we'd like to hear back before we can really fulsome consider this. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, and through the mayor, and seeing that we're referring it back to staff, I'm wondering if there's any insight that could be had from our field naturalists and our Langley Environmental Partnership Committee in just having some input into, especially our field naturalists. Maybe that's a question. Maybe that's up to staff. Maybe staff already work with our environmental groups. I know that we do on our Environmental Sustainability Committee. We have representation from both Langley Environmental Partnership Society and field naturalists. So I'm hoping that would be something that would happen. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. So Ms. Kenny, I just want to check that you're comfortable with what we've had as a referral motion right now.
Actually, I had yours, but I would appreciate if Councillor Albrecht could just reread his first portion. I have the road extension to Grade Crescent, but I wasn't sure about the first part, how you worded it.
The councillor.
Thank you. I didn't write it down, but I'll try to recall. I talked about the tree and environmental assessment process. We've got our urban forest study, how that matches up, in terms of protection and ongoing measures as we move forward. So it works in alignment. I talked about pedestrian connection, how that's going to work ultimately, as well as the road connection.
Pedestrian connection, that was the one, yeah. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So seeing no more comments from council on the referral back to staff, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? Is Councillor Mack opposed to the referral? Oh, you're in favor of the referral. Okay, perfect. So that's a unanimous referral to staff. So with that, we are on to item 7B, which is the housing agreement bylaw. So it's that the bylaw cited as a housing agreement, a bylaw 2024 number 3301 be read a final time. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by Councillor James. Any final comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? So opposed by Councillor Leith, or Councillor White and Councillor Mack, so that's carried. So that we're on to the next one, which is item 7C. So that's again part of the same package. So it's that the bylaw cited as zoning bylaw 1996 number 2100, amendment number 213 2024 number 3294 be read a final time. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by, I'll second it, so seconded by myself. Is there any further discussion on that? So seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? So it's opposed by Councillor Wallace, Councillor White, and Councillor Mack. So that's carried. We have item 7C1, that development permit number 0624 to accommodate a 6-story, 283 unit apartment development at 5360 204 Street be approved. So is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Albrecht, seconded by Councillor Solium. Any further discussion on the development permit? So seeing none, I'll call the question on the DP. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? So it's opposed by Councillor Wallace, White, and Mack. So that's carried. We're on to item 7D, which is final reading of the solid waste bylaw. So that the bylaw cited as the solid waste bylaw 2016 number 2991, amendment number 8, 2024 number 3299 be read a final time. Is there a mover? So moved by Councillor Wallace, seconded by Councillor Solium. Any further discussion on this? So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there any opposed? So it's opposed by Councillor Mack and carried. So we're on now to administrative reports. We have the Citizens Assembly recommendations in front of us. Do we have a presentation from Ms. Benno?
Yes, good evening. Through Mayor to Council, it's my pleasure to present a brief overview of the Langley City Citizens Assembly activation. My apologies, I downloaded the one on the agenda. There we go. This report responds to the September 2022 Council resolution to authorize resources and staff to convene a citizens assembly. And this presentation provides background of the Citizens Assembly development activities, and in the 4 sections covers the following areas: the Citizens Assembly concept testing, the Citizens Assembly activation plan, next steps and the timeline, and the summary and conclusions about how this will all be brought together for Citizens Assembly to focus on community safety, health, and well-being transformation. So the Langley City Citizen Assembly, as part of Council's endorsed resolution, staff was authorized to conduct the required work to complete the development and testing activities to inform the launch of the Citizens Assembly. This is with a focus on improving community safety and well-being. A Citizens Assembly is a special group of people who come together to talk about and focus on issues through research and deliberation to advise City Council. It functions in some ways as an assembly or public of ordinary citizens coming together with different and diverse perspectives. The Citizens Assembly, as endorsed by Council, will include a diverse representation of land-based Indigenous communities and people from diverse backgrounds and perspectives. Langley City's Citizens Assembly is not meant to be a regular meeting, a committee, or a table. Rather, it is a focused and carefully designed process that will be supported with data-informed and research-based resources. The members will first research and learn about the problems and the potential solutions from a host of experts and other residents, nonprofit organizations, and other groups who may have specific knowledge or interest in the different focus areas. That will be conducted through a series of research design team activities and solution labs as well. Assembly members will hold sessions to have open and respectful dialogue to deliberate the information that is presented and being discussed. This will consider many viewpoints as this is complex community issues around community safety, health, and well-being. And so it will really focus on working together in a collaborative manner to find the best solutions. Those solutions will move forward to a solution labs that have broader participation with community members and to a community forum where, again, a broader group of individuals will be invited in to be presented the potential solutions and recommendations. After that, the information or proposed recommendations will move forward to City Council for consideration. So the Assembly will focus on looking at community safety, health and well-being, potentially looking at other forms of secure support that provide stabilization for individuals, like access to affordable housing or integration around healthcare and social services, looking at ways to create stronger families and communities through connection, belonging, relationships, linking people to resources and support, and then also looking at social, economic, employment, and training opportunities. So in preparation, the Citizens Assembly was tested through the Langley City's 2024 Village Cafe Resource and Referral Fair events that included solution labs. The information that informed these events came from Langley City's restorative community dialogue process, which really focused on deep inquiry across a broad cross-section of the community. And so we held specific solution labs, and the focus was to bring in individuals from diverse points of the community and also to welcome community members in who may be there attending the resource fair as well. And so we focused on supportive housing, looking at ways to help build resiliency for our families in Langley City, looking at how to design comprehensive community safety, health, and well-being pathways, and then connecting that to transportation, employment, and education opportunities. All of these are elements that will ground the proposed Citizens Assembly as well. So from that, we not only focused on this content, but we also helped to inform the Citizens Assembly formation and structure as well. So looking at these solution labs, they provided focused deliberation, and there were recommendations that emerged out of them. Supportive housing, from that, we had a working group that went off to take a look at local manufactured housing providers as potential options to take a look at for either sheltering or community programming needs. We looked at how to support on-the-ground local actions to support families to connect to services, and that activated the food systems mapping that we're currently doing. And then also taking a look at the community safety and health pathways, where we had diverse folks around the table and individuals with expert lived experience knowledge as well. And so from that, there was a definite growing desire to participate in the Citizens Assembly if launched. So in addition to that, the Solution Labs offered an opportunity for deeper conversation around challenges and solutions. We did an impact evaluation, and participants felt that that structure was really engaging. And so I think that also helped us to further inform the effectiveness of a solution lab or a Citizens Assembly process versus an ongoing kind of networked table, because it's much more focused around action. So With Citizens Assembly moving forward, we would take a look at careful selection of members based on the diverse representation criteria that council put forward. This will be done through a random selection process to ensure that a broad cross-section of community members have an opportunity to apply and participate. We're potentially looking at 29 members of the assembly, but because it's integrated with research design teams and solution labs and a broader community forum, there's multiple ways community members and organizations can be involved. The assembly will hold regular sessions and discussions, and it will be facilitated to ensure that we have productive, respectful, and fair outcomes emerging. And in addition to that, there's preparatory work underway already, taking a look at best practice and data and information and resources, so the assembly is well resourced when it launches. Because there is a focus on ensuring that there is Indigenous representation on the assembly, that part of the preparatory work has included doing best practice research around protocol to ensure that we are engaging our Indigenous assembly members and other Indigenous representation or participants in a respectful and supportive manner. So the next steps are looking at an active recruitment process. So getting the communication out and the word out across multiple communication channels across the city, and then vetting those applications. There will also be a stewardship group to ensure that there's transparent and process and diligent kind of review of applications as well. We look forward to potentially launching then the Citizens Assembly in late January, early February with an onboarding and training session. And from there, running assembly sessions over the course of winter, spring 2025. That will culminate into a community forum. And then a report back to council with outcomes from the community forum and the proposed recommendations for further deliberation and review by council in fall of 2025. There will be monitoring reports ongoing at every stage of the work that is inclusive to all of the activities that I've mentioned in this report as well. The community forum acts like a place where we mobilize collective impact also across community and organizations and groups. So again, there's going to be multiple ways for everyone to come together to focus on actions and solutions to these complex community challenges that we are facing, but also mobilizing shared resources and doing so through an accountable way. So overall, Citizens Assembly will use a variety of methods to make sure it hears from many people and considers different viewpoints. It will include a broad cross-section of subject matter experts, along with our Indigenous community members and other local community partners and voices. So as we bring this all together, the Langley Citizens Assembly is a unique approach to improving community well-being, grounded in community safety transformation. And by bringing together diverse voices and using research, dialogue, and collaboration, the Assembly aims to create meaningful and lasting change. This process will involve regular communication with council, integration with the community development initiatives alongside the core assembly process, and will always ensure that there's multiple activities for the whole of community to be informed and involved in. So ultimately, the goal is to make Langley City a safer, healthier, and more resilient place for everyone. The Citizens Assembly plan incorporates a strong focus on equity, inclusion, and collaboration across multiple points and facets of our community. And the information will be integral that comes from the Assembly to help shape policies and actions that will make a difference in Langley City and across multiple strategies and frameworks in Langley City as well. So this would be a potential call out then to community with council's endorsement to reach out to us if you're interested in more information about Citizens Assembly or the potential opportunity to participate. And with that, Mayor and Council, I will open it for any questions or comments.
Well, thank you for the very detailed presentation. Is there any comments or questions from council? So I'm not seeing any. So we do have the or you have the question, Councillor White?
Thank you. Yes, I do. I was wondering, actually, before I ask my question, whether is this just a report that we're going to receive, or are we
There's
making
the
a
5
motion?
recommendations in our agenda that we would be
Right.
reading.
So I was just wondering whether I should wait to a broader question period, or can I just ask my question?
If that's your question now.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Ball. Through the mayor to Dina K. Benno. How will it be determined within the area of focus that's been identified, which issues of topics move forward to the Citizens Assembly? Are they issues that are referred to by council to the Citizens Assembly, or what process will that actually be?
Through Mayor to Council, the Citizens Assembly is really foundationally focused on the endorsed resolution by Council that is quite detailed around community safety transformation. There are aspects that touch upon quality of life, taking a look at more effective service utilization and how that will inform positive systems change, both from a financial perspective and an operational and systems level perspective. So that information has grounded the content that we have focused on in the preparation activities. With that, we've conducted strategic mapping that was really honed in on those areas and have done a comprehensive best practice review of other jurisdictions on how they're addressing those issues and how their work is being tied into some form of performance measurement system as well, because we recognize that this is an important factor for mayor and council as well. So with that information, we've honed in to about 5 focus areas that have quite specific outcomes. And then the work of the assembly will really help to sort through that and support the prioritization of that, and what are some of the tangible solutions or actions on the ground within the mandate and role of city government.
Thank you, Ms. Benno. Mayor, just another follow-up question. As a assembly moving forward, clearly these are issues that have been worked through and brought forward, and will be making a motion to accept the recommendations brought forward. As a practice beyond this, is this the normal course of action that we would be, you see the Citizens Assembly operating under, in that these issues are brought forward through a regular series of roundtables, or is it also as well that council is grappling with some issues, and hence we start a process of discernment that you take the community through and the Citizens Assembly through, and then start the process through that?
Through mayor to council, this does provide us the opportunity to examine through an impact evaluation this first assembly with respect to how it is functioning and the effectiveness of it coming back to council, but recognizing that we have conducted a lot of work on the ground that focuses on collective impact. This does activate with those set of conditions. So it does provide Langley City a roadmap of sorts to be able to really utilize citizens assembly as an ongoing mechanism if that is the choice of council. And also with the related work that's being currently done around a resiliency framework and other aspects, that will also be able to be mobilized through collective impact, meaning more than one organization or group can focus on those actions. So it does provide that foundation to work from.
So I guess I'll go to Mr. Chung, but I suppose if there's the direct question is if this one is successful, then council could consider using this as a model for any other kind of wicked problems that we may have. Mr. Chung.
Yeah, to the mayor, through Councillor White. Yes, that's pretty much what I was going to say. You know, we have a specific motion from council back in 2022 to look at community safety in terms of police services, fire rescue services, ambulance, bylaw, parks and engineering. So, you know, this is citizen assemblies will focus on those issues. And like you said, we'll see the outcome of this citizen assemblies and review and analyze whether we're going to be moving forward with undertaking this approach for other things that we are, you know, maybe considering. So we'll take the direction from council later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung, and Ms. Benno, thank you so much for the work and the countless hours and interviews and dialogues that have gone into bringing this to this stage. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you through the mayor, and thank you, Councillor White, for your questions that I won't ask because you've asked, but I'm looking forward to a positive systems change that involve many different voices within our community. And I thank Ms. Benno for all of the work and everybody else that's already been involved in the community and staff and that for making, you know, this come to fruition. One of my questions, maybe, I don't know if it's going to happen, but when we get to the first assembly forum or whatever, I was wondering if there was a way that we could do a visual mapping of something that we could keep, in the sense of, you know, when you're telling a story and they're you know, they're drawing and making notes and just having those community voices, you know, be in a visual mapping that the city could keep, just as an example of, in a visual sense of that working. So that's just a question of, is that a possibility? Yeah, and just thank you for all the work.
Thank you. Through mayor to council and Councillor Wallace, yes, absolutely. We can most definitely support that for the community forum.
So we do have 5 recommendations in front of us that I'd prefer not to read unless someone wants me to. But would anybody like to move the recommendations as they are in agenda? So moved by Councillor Mack, seconded by Councillor Wallace. Any further discussion on those 5 recommendations? And Councillor White, are you here as well? So Councillor Albrecht, go ahead. I want to make sure that Councillor White is here for the vote. So go ahead with your question, though.
Thank you, Mayor Bahal. And it's not so much a question. Ms. Benno, I want to just really express my heartfelt gratitude for all your hard work and your team, because I know you had other people helping. To develop a comprehensive social network for our residents is a huge undertaking, and it's just incredible what you've done to ensure that no one gets left behind in our community. The fulsome review of our community needs was well overdue and is going to be really helpful as we move forward. And I'm genuinely excited about what the future of our community is going to look like and the great things that we're going to accomplish. So I just wanted to thank you so very much.
Thank you, Councillor Albrecht. Any further discussions on the recommendations? So seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? So any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. I look forward to our first Citizens Assembly. Very exciting times, transformative change for Langley City. So with that, we're going to switch gears and go to urban forest management strategy. So we'll say goodbye to Ms. Benno, and we'll say hello to some folks from Diamond Head Consulting, I believe. And maybe Mr. Pollock's going to start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe just a really brief introduction just before Camille gives her presentation. And maybe just to start off with, I really would like to thank Camille and Diamond Head for all the work that they've done on this project to bring it forward. It's certainly very valuable document. So basically, having gone through 2 rounds of public engagement and a couple of rounds with council itself and with the Environment Committee, we're here to hopefully seek council's endorsement of the urban forest management strategy. And it's a project that started back last year and has garnered, I think, a lot of interest through the community. So with that, maybe I'll just pass it over to Camille, but I do believe that the actions that are identified in the strategy are certainly very useful in helping council obtain its goals in terms of tree protection and addressing climate change. And also, whilst we haven't yet formally got endorsement, I know that there's a couple of issues that staff are already moving forward on, which is the sort of the considering what the scope would be for a tree management bylaw and also for the street tree inventory, because those are, I think, very important pieces, and we're looking to be able to fund those out of some grant funding under the LG CAP program. But with that, I'll certainly pass it over to Camille for her presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just give me 1 second here to get my screen sharing set up. Okay. All right. So yeah, good evening. Great to be with this council again tonight, presenting on Langley City's urban forest management strategy. As was mentioned, my name is Camille Lefrançois. I'm the environmental planning manager with Diamond Head Consulting, and also have been a project manager in developing the strategy. So very pleased to be here with you this evening to provide you with an update. I will be keeping this presentation very brief. Just a reminder of our project work phases, highlights from our second phase of engagement, and then a few comments on some of the edits that were made to update the strategy since it was last presented to this council last September. So just to remind everyone on council, our work, as was mentioned by Mr. Pollock, started in the spring of 2023 and took place over 3 big phases of work that were interspersed by 2 rounds of public engagements. Our first round of engagement took place in June of 2023, and the last one just took place in September and October of this fall. Council might remember from the last presentation about this work, some of those details, but again, as a brief reminder, we really started our work looking at better understanding the local context in Langley City when it comes to your policies, practices, as well as gathering data and doing some analysis to assess the state of your urban forest. And one of the key metrics that came out of that, which is present in the urban forest management strategy, of course, is canopy cover, which we looked at over 2 time periods. And you can see here a map of 2021, which is the most recent year that we analyzed canopy for. You may also recall, as I was mentioning, our first phase of engagement, which took place in the summer of 2023. We had reached out and engaged just over 200 people through a survey a booth at the Community Day Festival, an online mapping tool, as well as presentation to your Environmental Sustainability Committee. And the intent at the time had really been focused on learning more about concerns and aspirations for urban forest management from your community members. Now, following the Phase 1 engagement, our team worked hard to draft the strategy that was presented to this council and the Environment Sustainability Committee through first in the spring of this year, and then most recently in September. And I am now here tonight to present to you a couple of the highlights from what we heard in that second round of engagement, as well as some of the edits that were made to the strategy in response to that input. So as I mentioned, our Phase 2 engagement was running in September and October of this year. We reached about 74 participants through a survey, as well as also had presented to your Environmental Sustainability Committee, as well as Council, as I mentioned, in April and September of this year. Now I'll be taking you through a couple of the highlights, particularly from our survey results. So from the 64 community members that answered the survey, we heard that there was a pretty high level of agreement generally when it came to agreement with the strategy presenting content, metrics, and data clearly. In fact, we heard that 86.7% or more of respondents felt that that was done somewhat or strongly, as well as that the draft strategy was also communicating and providing good direction on the management of the city's urban forests. So fairly high levels of agreement from those survey respondents. We had also asked them more specifically for input on their level of agreement with the vision statement that is really setting the direction for the action plan that's embedded in the draft strategy. And again, we heard that about 88% of our survey respondents somewhat or strongly agreed with the draft vision statements. We had asked respondents as well for their level of support on the draft canopy cover targets, and more specifically presenting the baseline and aspirational targets that are included in the strategy. And we had heard that nearly 50% of respondents felt comfortable with the targets as presented, and that about 36% would like that target to be higher, and a smaller number of respondents who felt that the target perhaps was too high. We had also heard from council and committee members that the aspirational target in particular was likely to be fairly ambitious to achieve given the types of changes that we're anticipating in the community. And then finally, we also asked our survey respondents about their level of support for the core actions that are included in the strategy. And council may recall in the executive summary to the strategy, we highlight three big groups of actions that we anticipate will have the most significant impacts on changes to canopy cover and the urban forest in Langley City. So those are those three core actions that were included in the survey. And there we found that 98% of survey respondents, in fact, somewhat or strongly supported the plan's core action. We had also heard from this council that there was interest in quick starting the city tree inventory, especially so the street tree inventory that was mentioned there by Mr. Pollock as well. So that's a very brief summary of some of the highlights from that engagement. As you can see, we generally found that there was fairly high support for the draft strategy that as was presented for engagement. And as a result, we're not coming here tonight with a strategy that saw significant revisions, rather a few small changes that I'll just highlight in the slide here. So mainly, we've incorporated the results from that second round of engagements in the relevant section of the strategy, as well as appended the full engagement summary. And then we made a number of minor edits related to those three main points that you can see here on the screen. So we made a couple clarifications to data or methodology, for example, clarifying the tools that were used for calculating ecosystem services, or making some small corrections to the tree planting details that are provided with the canopy cover target, where we found some discrepancies with our data. And then we also clarified some of the content and added information that was provided through engagement participants, committee members, as well as members of council. This includes, for example, listing Langley Field Naturalists as one of the non-governmental organizations that work within and stewards Langley City's urban forest, as well as adding a bit more detail on forest health issues and alignment with other city goals, for example, related to stormwater management. And then the last one I'll mention here, which I was speaking to just a minute ago, is also an update to the implementation plan to move the city tree inventory to a short-term action and to be part of the quick start actions that staff are working towards in the early implementation of this plan. So this is a very brief summary of those small updates that were made since you last saw the document. And in closing for this presentation, I just wanted to close with the staff recommendation here that City Council endorses the urban forest management strategy. And with that, I will be turning it back over to Council for any questions or comments.
Thank you very much for the presentation. At this time, I will turn it over to see if we have any questions or comments. So I am not seeing any. It is a very comprehensive report. I have one quick question. I also noticed there was a short-term action for updating our subdivision bylaw as well. Is that being considered as well? I think it was subdivision and development services bylaw to strengthen tree protection and maintain and improve tree planting quality. Is that part of the quick wins too?
Yes, I would say that would be included as that. Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. So that's awesome. So we do have a recommendation in front of us because I'm not seeing any other. Oh, Councillor Walsh, are you moving it? Okay. So the recommendation is that we adopt this new tree management strategy. So it's going to be seconded by Councillor Albrecht. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. Amazing job. I know there was a ton of work that went into this, and thanks also to the environmental sustainability group as well, and other groups. Amazing. So we're on to item 8C, interim housing needs report. So over to Mr. Johansson, and he can give us the latest on what the provincial government is telling us. So.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I've got Mr. Metelnikov with me here tonight, who's going to do the bulk of the presentation for us. But I just want to start off by saying, the purpose of the report is for Council to consider interim housing needs report numbers. It's important to note that these interim numbers, as required by the recent housing legislation that everyone's well aware of, it's limited in scope to primarily just identifying the number of units needed over the next 5 to 20 years. It's really, they're not mandated targets. They're different than the housing target orders that were given to the tranches of municipalities prior to the election. This is really about providing a sense or a tool for municipalities to ensure there's enough land supply for housing units over a 5 to 20 year period. So with that, I'll have Anton just run us through a few slides, and away we go. Anton, did you need me to share the screen? Okay, you got it.
Oh, I see it.
Okay, good.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is that showing up all right? Great, thank you. And thank you, Mayor and Council and members of the public. So as Carl mentioned, just presenting the interim housing needs report, which is something that the province has required us to do by the end of this year. Housing needs reports were first brought in by the province in 2018, and originally we were supposed to update them every 5 years from that point, from the point of receiving the first one. So Langley City did receive our first housing needs report in 2021, and under the original schedule would have been required to receive a new one in 2026. However, housing needs report requirements were updated as part of the suite of housing legislation passed in 2023, specifically Bill 44, which is the same bill that brought in the SMU requirements, and the public hearing changes also required that housing needs reports be changed in the way that they're done. And as part of that, they required that an interim housing needs report be prepared by the end of 2024. A full housing needs report will be required in 2028, at which point we will return to a standard 5-year schedule. So Carl provided a good bit of context there, but just for a tiny bit more background, essentially this is to match up with other parts of the new provincial legislation. The province is looking to update housing needs reports requirements, but presumably to avoid requiring full new housing needs reports to be done so soon after the first round was completed. It was only this interim report that was required, again, before returning to a regular schedule. And the housing needs report regulation specifically notes that this can take the form of an edit or an appendix to the existing housing needs report. And that is how staff is proposing to structure our interim report here. So in other words, the interim report that's attached to the agenda in the form that it's in has been prepared to comply with provincial legislative requirements. So there are three main new requirements that have been brought in. The most major one is moving from identifying just a 5-year housing need to both a 5-year and a 20-year housing need, and that's being done under a new calculation formula. Additionally, a statement's required to be added about housing needs near alternative transportation, such as walking, cycling, and transit infrastructure, and a description of actions taken by the city to reduce housing needs since the previous report also needs to be provided. So to satisfy the requirement for this interim housing needs report by the end of 2024, it's only these three items that need to be included to meet those legislated requirements. And this contrasts with a full housing needs report, which can include more data, more flexibility on how the city wants to complete that, a number of additional statements on housing needs, and quite a bit more of qualitative work too. So as mentioned, the interim housing needs report requires those needs to be calculated under a new formula. And the reason for this is that from the first round of housing needs reports, it was found that many municipalities use many different methods to calculate their needs, and it was very hard to compare between these. So a new standardized way was brought in. So under this new formula, the table on the right shows what the city's resultant housing needs are in terms of the number of units that are needed in 5 years and in 20 years. The actual needs themselves are the numbers highlighted in yellow. The other numbers above are just show the underlying components that are added up to come up with those total numbers. So it's important to note that these subcomponents are only provided as additional detail and information and don't have any requirements or expectations associated with them specifically. So for example, any one of these should not be interpreted as something, a goal to achieve or something to address. It's just showing that kind of background transparency as to how that total number is calculated. And the total really is the main outcome of this housing needs report update, because the city will be required, again, under the new legislation, to update our OCP and our zoning bylaw to ensure that both of them provide enough capacity to allow for 20 years worth of this housing growth to be provided. And that's something the city, along with all of the municipalities, is going to be required to do on a 5-year basis. So again, just repeating Mr. Johansson's intro, it's very important to note that these housing needs are not targets. The city does have a separate provincial housing target, and the two are shown in comparison in this table. The 5-year housing needs report figure is double the housing target, and there are a number of differences related to this. So again, the main goal of the housing needs report is really to inform OCP land uses and zoning to meet that 20-year supply of housing. The housing target actually expects full construction and so is more related to current projects and very soon upcoming development applications we have too. Whereas again, the housing needs report, it's looking to provide the land for applications to come in. And so the housing needs report has both 5 and 20-year figures attached to it, whereas the target just has the 5-year. And again, because it's land use based, the housing needs report is somewhat more focused on making sure you have the land to take in applications, whereas the housing target order is really concerned with completions of these units. And so in this first year that the city has its target, we're already counting projects that being completed that were applied for a couple of years back. The housing needs report also has a broad, somewhat coarser outlook, given that it does just focus on that raw total number of housing units needed. And the housing target order, conversely, while they're not necessarily targets, it does come with a number of guidelines on the number of bedrooms that may be needed, ownership versus rental housing units, affordability levels among those rental units. So that additional detail is included on that side. And finally, the housing needs report has more data within it, which explains some of the difference in the size. So for example, in the previous slide, under those components, there is an additional local demand component, which is used in the housing needs report, but not in the housing target calculation. So moving away from the number of units themselves, we had a couple statements that needed to be provided. The first on needs near alternative transport highlighted the fact that the city's OCP is already strongly aligned with walking, bicycling, and transit. The challenges the city's soil conditions and airport height limit create on two sides for parking construction and the impact that may have on housing supply. The investments that the city has made in bus priority, bike lanes, and sidewalks, and a recognition of the relationship between housing and transportation and their combined costs. The description of the actions taken by the city since receiving the 2021 Housing Needs Report includes the the city adopting an OCP with a strong housing focus, including a requirement for a one-to-one rental unit replacement, the adoption of a tenant relocation plans policy and its subsequent update and strengthening, recent zoning bylaw updates, including the required identification of transit-oriented areas, plex homes, and associated parking updates, and ongoing zoning bylaw and policy work, which will further help support housing construction, which will include density bonusing and inclusionary zoning. So as far as next steps go, as per the legislation, again, we are going to have to take the results of this housing needs report update and update and review our OCP and zoning bylaws to ensure that they have the capacity needed to accommodate that 20-year housing target number within the housing needs report. Based on a preliminary review, the existing OCP definitely has this capacity, and the zoning bylaw likely does as well. And a full housing needs report will then need to be completed in 2028. And in the meantime, of course, ongoing housing-related policy work will continue, including completing a new zoning bylaw, updating the development application procedures bylaw, and working on density bonusing and inclusionary zoning. So thank you very much for hearing our presentation. Staff's recommendation is that council receive the interim housing needs report.
Thank you very much. That was great. And like you said, this is interim and we'll be doing a fulsome one just to comply with legislation. So is there any questions on this update? I think it's fairly basic. So would anybody like to move the recommendation that we receive it? So moved by Councillor Soliam, seconded by Councillor White. Further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. We're on to our final thing, which is housekeeping. I think I have stared at things for 6 hours now, so I can barely read this. But I'll just move this as is presented in our agenda. It's just some banking and signing of officer stuff. So seconded by Councillor Albrecht. Any further discussion? So I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. And I'll move that this meeting adjourn. And it's seconded by Councillor Wallace. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And I look forward to seeing everybody in an open meeting in the new year. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you